Welcome everyone to this looking at the grandmothers uh, preparing for 2020 online summit, accessing the grandmother wisdom. I'm Kaylin Castell here with Tammy Brunk, and this is a deeper look into what we presented for the main part of the summit. And so this is the bonus that everyone is going to get to experience that has purchased the package. And we're so excited to share this with you. So you want to do the overview, Tammy?
Sure. Yes. So we're going to begin just by talking a little bit about the grandmother's prophecy, and then talk just about and just speak into and give gratitude for the grandmothers and wise elders that we have present in our lives. And then Kaylin's going to speak into, we're going to be talking about prophecy this time as we did last time, and Kaylin's going to go more in depth into that with bird tribes and other prophecies and other ways that we're seeing the grandmother wisdom come through through these stories. And then talk about the sacred hoop and how that also connects to this elder wisdom. Then we'll talk about a personal practice to enhance awareness that Pema Chodron, also a beautiful elder of our time, has to share. And some powerful journaling practices and vision board practices, altars that we can use to really deeply work with the wisdom and the energies of the grandmothers and really bring them forward. And then we'll be also speaking about the connection between the grandmother wisdom and DNA, and our bloodlines and our ancestry, and how to work powerfully with that. And then we'll complete by doing an exercise and a meditation to connect into the grandmother guide within, and our own future self, our own future wise elder, as well as part of that journey being about helping to heal the ancestral trauma that we may hold within us as expressed through our own grandmother lineage. And
Yay.
So it's a lot.
It's a lot. We're going to try to do this quickly.
Yes.
So in October 2004, there were 13 Indigenous grandmothers that came together from around the world. And they were people that had been told by their grandmothers that there was their destiny to come together as a tribe of grandmothers, 13 Indigenous grandmothers. And in the fulfillment of a prophecy that many world Indigenous tribes share, some version of this prophecy, that when the grandmothers from the four directions speak, a new time is coming. And so I would say we're in that new time for sure. And that it's just such a great reminder about how important it is for us to be open to, working with the grandmothers and the elders. It doesn't have to just be grandmothers, especially, for men, if they feel more comfortable working with the grandfathers or the elder wisdom that's around them, then of course we encourage that. But we are specifically focusing on the grandmothers because the Capricorn Mystery School feminine archetype really speaks to the circle of grandmothers. And so that's why we've been focusing on that particular topic. And one of the things this prophecy also revealed to everyone that was part of it was that it was time for them to now share their most secret and sacred ways with the people who had been their oppressors, as the survival of humanity and the whole entire planet is ultimately at stake. So powerful prophecy. And this is really the foundation of why we're doing this work with you today. So from some of the Indigenous tribes, they really do speak to how important it is to value the grandmothers, to value the elders, to value the wisdom keepers. And there's some things that they see in common around that these elders, these grandmothers, these wisdom keepers are young at heart, they're loving and kind, their wisdom is valued and sought out, or people seek them out to connect with them, to ask them, maybe get confirmation about their own guidance and what's going on for them. That these are the ones that are also here to improve the lives of others. They hold a broad vision of the interconnectedness of all life. This is something that these are also qualities we can be, intending to further enhance in our own lives. And of course, they're connected to their ancestors. They're grounded in their cultural traditions. But at the same time, also accepting of others and their traditions. It's like, it's not just my way. That's the right way, but there are many ways to honor Great Spirit and to honor Great Mystery. And, many different cultures have developed different ways of doing that, and that's awesome. They are also unofficial leaders. They share their wisdom through stories, and that's part of what we're going to be doing here today, is sharing some stories as well. And they offer an expanded perspective. They're wise role models for their community, especially the children. Awesome.
Yeah, so I just want to speak a little bit to that, Kaylin, too. Just to say that no matter what culture we all come from, that part of why we're doing this work is because we acknowledge that this grandmother wisdom is so needed at this time. And so even when you think about this list and consider this isn't just about Native people and Indigenous people and their life ways. It's also about asking the question, to what degree can we cultivate these qualities in ourselves? And when you look at this list, do you also see yourself there? Are there ways that you yourself are bringing back this really valuable insight that's kind of part of a core cultural way of being?
As you said that, Tammy, it reminded me of a Native American woman, I'm trying to think of her name right now, who does a dance to mend the sacred hoop. Very powerful dance I've been a part of many times. And she said, we're all Indigenous. That if you have ancestors sleeping on this land, even if your ancestors migrated here, if you have ancestors sleeping on this land, that have passed, died, and gone on to other, you are Indigenous to this land, wherever that might be. So just something else to keep in mind.
And if we can live that way and actually perceive of it that way, that we belong to this place also. Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the bird tribes and how they are returning. And I had some very specific experiences some years ago, back in 2000, around this piece, and it's been coming back to me again 17 years later. So the bird tribes are returning from the most distant land of our hearts. They bring us the vision of who we truly are. One people, one planet, whirling in the arms of the stars. I love that. So yeah, we're all connected. And then just something to keep in mind is that we do have totems. And there are bird totems, and there are many different forms they can take. I just listed a few of some of the ones I've been working with, and I know Tammy's going to share a little bit about hers in a moment. But, we have the golden eagle, which has been playing a big role for me for a while, falcon, hawk, hummingbird, owl, raven, doves, vultures. And the thing about vultures, I know some cultures they're kind of forbidden. I had mentioned something about having an experience with a vulture to a native Navajo man, and he freaked out. He was like, "Oh my God!" But all of these animals have a place in the web of life, and they're messengers. The birds, especially, are the messengers. So, what messages are they bringing us? And paying attention to how they show up in our lives is very important. So
absolutely. And as Kaylin's saying, since this is part of the prophecy of what's happening right now, you may also notice, just because we brought it up, you might start to think yourself about all the ways that you've been getting messages from the bird, the winged ones, from the bird totems. I'll just say for myself that when I first started doing this work with the grandmothers, with the Venus cycle, it was right as my father was about ready to pass, and I had the night I recognized that was when I heard a barred owl right outside my window hooting, and I knew in that moment my dad had only a little bit longer. And 2 days later, I encountered a barred owl that had died at the side of the road just moments before I passed. And I worked with that owl medicine, and I worked with that medicine for quite some time. And just recently, a friend, a native friend, just also found another barred owl because just a few days ago, which to me always represents that grandmother energy and working with that. And then also 2 days ago, I had the vulture like right in front of me, just like rise up out of the road. So, think about it's like just paying attention. The red-shouldered hawk that calls every day my back window. So just paying attention and to seeing how they're showing up can be
It's so,
powerful way to
so
listen to
powerful.
messages.
Yeah, you know, you're
Yeah.
reminding me, I had a vulture fly right over me and then like just felt like feet above me. I could feel its wind as it went by. When I was hiking, this was back in 2002, and I had the instant knowing that someone had died. And
Mm.
I got my phone out and I called my husband, a different husband at that time. I called him, and my great aunt had just passed. So, so they can be messengers like that as well. And then, of course, this is a grandmother owl that I got in Santa Fe this year that is representing the owls here, and specifically designed as a grandmother owl for the people. So I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, so what happened for me in the year 2000, and it was during the 7-planet alignment. So you couldn't see them because the sun was there, but there was a new moon with Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn all lined up together. And some people were saying this is like really indicative of a new time that is being seeded in its new moon. And so several of my priestess sisters and I traveled to Mesa Verde, and we were going to be doing big ceremony on this day. And that morning I woke up with this, having had this dream, hearing this, you know, I'm like asking, where the heck am I? Because I'm really high above the world. And it's saying, you've returned to live with the bird people. I'm like, what? And that woke me up. Like, what? Who are the bird people? I've never heard of this term before, ever. I'm like, that's crazy. So a couple of days later, I'm in Dove Creek, Colorado, doing some more ceremony. We did a big ceremony for several days around this time. And in a giveaway ceremony, I received this ring, and it's a Firebird ring. And I was like, bird tribes, bird people, Firebird ring, whatever. I've pretty much worn it ever since. And then a few days later, I was in Flagstaff, and we stopped there, you know, to visit another sacred sister on our way back to Tucson. And we spent the night there. And I wake up in the morning, I'm looking at her bookshelf and just reading all the titles. Not sure why I'm doing that, but I see this book called Return of the Bird Tribes. And I was like, whoa, Return of the Bird Tribes? I probably better look at that. And I open it up to this passage that is so amazing. It's like, this is White Buffalo Calf Woman. We had just come from Buffalo Women Ranch. And she's saying, my tribe is the Firebird. I just got a Firebird ring. I'm like, whoa. And the next thing she says is, I am one of the bird people, exactly the words that were in my dream. And this is whose tribe once covered this island of the turtle. Do you remember the winged ones of heaven, the Firebirds, the thunder tribes? How long has it been since you called us into your councils? So I was pretty blown away by that. And knowing that something big had happened, something big was happening. This is just another piece, a couple more pieces that come from that book. That was just, the woman that had the book, she lent it to me, and then I eventually bought my own copy. But she, White Buffalo Calf Woman, goes on to say, creation requires a gathering together and focusing of your power within a circle of commitment, like a seed, and we are talking about us being seed people at this time, an egg, a womb, or a marriage. If you would create and not destroy, you must remember always the sacred hoop. Consider wisely the ways you use your power, and then around those ways, draw the sacred circle of commitment. In the warm atmosphere of that circle, the power of love builds and builds like a storm above the wet summer prairie until suddenly the circle can hold no more and explodes into the conception of the new. And that's just such a beautiful description of kind of what we're talking about here with this whole preparing for 2020 and being the seed people, and, you know, allowing that vision, allowing that wisdom, that whatever, to build within us, so that by the time we get to 2020, we have something that can explode into the conception of the new, that can be seeded at that time. I love it.
So powerful. Love it.
Yes.
Love those visions, Kaylin.
Thank you. And so the book goes on to describe the bird tribes as the spiritual guardians of the earth, the angelic entities, human spirit or higher selves, beings who the Great Spirit creates on the physical plane, previous incarnates on this planet, and original creators of life. So how cool is that? And then it goes on to talk about how the sacred hoop, and we're going to talk a lot about the sacred hoop in a moment, can no longer be denied. The circle requires completion, and that it's time for us to honor that as our incarnation begin. We are the bird tribes, the Ogawana, the people of reality. And I just also included there's been a lot of bird images in the crop circles. So these are that. Yeah.
Powerful. Yeah.
So just speaking to the importance, like even the crop circles are telling us, pay attention to the bird people, to the bird tribes.
So funny, Kaylin, even as you were saying that, I remember my dream from last night, which was a colony of these birds, these little birds. So interesting. Thank you.
My pleasure. So glad. Yeah, the birds are speaking to us, and they are the messengers. So and they all have different messages to bring. So what you're seeing here is the 100 Eagle Feather Hoop of Nations. And this hoop was created from a vision. And I have another slide that kind of tells a little bit more of the story. I'm just going to kind of briefly describe it, that there was this man, Don Coyas, who in a vision, he saw the willow tree lose its leaves, and then it created a circle. And as the circle was being formed, it was these bald eagle and golden eagle feathers that came, 100 of them, to form the circle. And he's like, whoa, what does that mean? So he goes to his elders and he asks them to help him figure out this vision. And they tell him, they confer, and they come back and they tell him that he is to build a sacred hoop of 100 eagle feathers. And he's pretty daunted by this, because to get one eagle feather in a lifetime is pretty momentous. To get 2 is like super momentous. To get 100 is unheard of. So he doesn't know how that's going to happen. And he's kind of like, how am I going to get that? And they said, don't worry, it'll come. And they started coming. The very next day, someone hands him an eagle feather. And after that, pretty much every day, he got 1 or 2 eagle feathers, and it lasted for about 3 months. And then pretty soon he had 100 of them. And they brought together people from all over, actually, the U.S. and other cultures from the 4 directions, and blessed this hoop. And I had the opportunity to walk with it. There was a time, actually, from July 2nd to July 10th of 2000, and this 100 Eagle Feather Hoop of Nations that had been blessed with these 4 powers of healing, hope, unity, and forgiving the unforgivable, to walk across the United States from LA to Washington, D.C., and a big part of their journey was to reverse the Trail of Tears. And I know you want to say something about that, Tammy.
Oh, I just want to say that, it's been that many years since those seeds were planted, and there's a lot more work to be done. But I know for myself, part of the reason I moved from the Southwest back to Missouri, it feels to me very strongly that I wanted to be part of what's happening here now, which is that kind of physical manifestation of the reversal of the Trail of Tears, where in these states, where in Missouri and the Midwest, where there is no longer a Native presence, that there is now that now some of us are really seeing that vision of connecting with the tribes, for example, who are in Oklahoma, because that's where many of those tribes ended up, and restoring a strong connection between these lands and those lands. And that I recently went to a confederacy in Oklahoma at this encampment where they're creating an indigenous eco-village, and it's called Okalawa Camp, and I'll be going in a week to Good Hearted People's Camp, which is it's that same camp kind of re-envisioned. But part of their intent at the confederacy was to bring together the 39 tribes and create kind of a parallel a confederacy, a parallel government, kind of like the Iroquois Confederacy, so that they can really restore their own indigenous cultural lifeways. And they said at that time, they asked for a non-Native representative to be the 40th member. And I was the only one there, and they asked if I would be that 40th person, which made me really consider even more deeply how important it is that there be allies in these areas where those people had been pushed off of from those lands, to restore the connection and to support in whatever way is possible the people now in Oklahoma and in the Indian territories to restore, to heal their own cultures, and also to create spaces in these lands where they once lived, so that they can return, and that indigenous presence can return there. And it's returning through natives and non-natives, both.
Both, right? Because we're all in this together, right? So, so they did call in people from the four directions, and just for those who might not know, the yellow part of the hoop is considered to be connected to Tibet, the Asian cultures. Of course, the red is the Native American, the black is African, and the white is European. And when they came together in 1994, they blessed this sacred hoop in 1994 in a pasture that was connected to where the first white buffalo calf was born and still living at that particular time. And there was a prophecy about the white buffalo calf. When the white buffalo starts to return, of course, we're going to have a time of possible healing and transition and change that will be something that will be for all the people and not just a few. So they, again, gave these four powers to the sacred hoop. And so what's interesting to me, and one of the reasons I was inspired to bring this back in, was on November 2nd, I woke up in the morning from a dream. There was this golden eagle. It was flying very much like in this picture, looking right at me with its mouth open and sending out sound waves. And I could almost see the waves as they left the eagle. And I was stunned. I was like, man, was it vivid and real? And how am I so high up in the sky? How am I having this experience? I'm like waking up with these questions. And I connected with a woman that day who was doing a house clearing for our new home. And I said, I just had this really powerful dream. I need to ask you if you get anything around it. And she said that this is a part of her spirit, and that she was coming to me, and that she had this eagle feather to give me. So of course I am, and I get it in the mail like a week later. I am like so blown away, because I never thought I would have an eagle feather in my lifetime. I just didn't think that was going to happen. So, and then she said that the spirits recognize you and your work to benefit others, and that is why I was being gifted this feather. So,
well, Caitlin,
what? Go ahead.
I just want to honor the fact that this is coming to you right as you really have helped to initiate this concept of the 2020 Vision Summit, and done so much powerful work to bring it together. It's all about vision, right?
Yes.
So how interesting the timing of it.
Yes, an eagle is most connected to vision, flies highest,
Exactly.
closest to great mystery. And you're reminding me, in 2001, I think it was 2001, I saw a golden eagle very close to my home. I was with a couple of other priestess sisters. We'd come together to do ceremony, and this eagle shows up, and it's eating a bird, and then it flies off, and then it just keeps flying in circles, higher and higher and higher. I know that they say eagle flies closest to great mystery, but literally this eagle flew so high it flew out of sight. It was a little tiny dot, and then it just disappeared. And I'm like, it flew up to the sun. It really does do that. And so that's why eagle has the biggest vision. So cool. So yeah, 2020 vision. Thank you for that piece, Tammy. I didn't even put that piece together.
Yeah.
Just now.
Amazing timing. You got some serious recognition there.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, world. I love that. So here's Pema Chodron. She is a wisdom keeper, an elder, a grandmother, and she speaks to the importance of three practices. And so this is something that we can all cultivate as we're moving towards 2020. And the first practice is awareness. It's also known as mindfulness, but to be aware of when we get triggered, when we get hooked, when we, when we have a challenging situation that is activating our own conditioning that we may have. And maybe we react to that. And so she said, awareness is the first piece. And so that can, when we have awareness, then we can begin to change our point of view. And then, of course, that begins to change our life as soon as we begin to change our point of view. So, and then it's about taking steps to change your perspective. So to be aware of the places where you get triggered or hooked into the emotional response that puts you in survival mode, and then to have a different response, to do something different, not to do what you've always done, yell, scream, hide, retreat. I've often retreated, deer in the headlights.
Go into overwork mode.
Right, exactly.
Avoid.
I won't feel into this. I'm not going to feel what this feels like. Whatever. Yeah. And then when you become aware that that's what you're doing, you can make a better choice as a result. And then the third thing is to be willing to make this a daily practice, because it's not easy, and we can become aware sometimes more quickly. I know I'm more aware now than I've ever been, but I still get hooked. I still get triggered. I still go into reaction, and then I have to notice, and then I have to make a better choice in how I'm going to do that. And so it's an ongoing, lifelong practice, and it really makes a difference.
And don't you think, Kaylin, I think also part of this is, as we speak about coming into our elderhood, no matter our age, the more we're willing to own our power as women, as individuals, I think sometimes it makes it so that this work is like 10 times more important, because it amplifies everything. When you have access to your personal power, all of these triggers, sometimes it's not like you become this person who's just like automatically knows how to use it. Everything gets amplified. So if you're going to lash out at someone, or if you're going to have a response to something, sometimes it's 10 times bigger because you're working with bigger energy. Yeah. And so that's where these kinds of humbling practices are very important when we're learning to navigate our personal power.
And if we've started with the small things, then it's easier to get aware and apply it to the bigger things. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Pema Chodron. Brilliant.
Yes, I love her face there. That's such a great photo.
I know. Yes. So, so then also in the first video, we talked about the questions that the grandmothers, I had this walk, and they were like asking me all these questions, and I was recording them into my phone. So it occurred to me is that you could take this practice more deeply and do a journaling thing on it. Maybe live with these questions for a month, one a month. And then when you're done, go back and revisit and see if anything has changed, and journal about what you get. So we're not going to go through the questions, but they're here for you, and you'll have access to the PDF if this is something you want to do, or maybe you'll come up with your own questions. But really, one of the ways to access our own inner wise grandmother knowing is through journaling. It's amazing what you know when you set the time aside to connect in with it.
Absolutely.
And then, so this is more of the questions, but I just wanted to share this grandmother. This is from Proverbs, actually, that grandmother, strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. I was like, that is so cool.
Yeah, powerful.
Great. Yeah. So keeping that in mind, and maybe even journaling around that. Like I love the whole practice of kindness. And I also love the idea of rejoicing in time to come. I feel like I am rejoicing more in my life now than I ever have. The first part of my life was kind of challenging. I didn't really rejoice very much.
Beautiful.
But now I do. I get to do it every day. I love it. It's such a great practice to rejoice, to celebrate, to be excited about, to find the things we're grateful for. Another good practice. So. And then you can also call in grandmother guidance with a vision board and or altar. A vision board you put on your altar, or a vision board you just put somewhere where you can see it often, or an altar that doesn't have a vision board but maybe has symbols of the things that you're wanting to connect with in terms of your grandmother wisdom. And so, these are the steps. First, to create a sacred space in whatever way works for you, and then ask for guidance. And put on music that inspires you. Perhaps the grandmother song that we shared in the last video from Lisa Teal, Grandmothers Weaving the Rainbow, Grandmothers Weaving the Light, Grandmothers Weaving the Rainbow, Weaving the Threads of My Life. That song, that's a great song, to call in the grandmothers. And then, journal around what it is that you really want to connect with, and then create a vision board from there. So you can read the rest of these examples on how to do that. And if you have questions, you can ask during the Q&A on the 20th of December. You can ask us, because we'll be on that call.
Awesome.
Anyway, here's an example of one I just did. And I was just asking questions like, how can I be more loving? How can I be more kind? What's next for me? What's mine to do? Where's my community? And then just putting images of the different expressions of the grandmothers, grandmother moon with Venus here at the bottom, lots of heart energy and gratitude energy. And, the idea that we can tap into that grandmother wisdom.
Mm. Beautiful. Awesome. Wow. Such powerful ways of connecting in to the grandmother wisdom. And so much of what Kaylin has been speaking to is the bigger picture and the higher vision, and also the spiritual lineage in a way of the grandmothers. So I'm going to just bring it down to the grandmothers in our bloodline, our ancestral connection now, because there are those different layers that we can access. So from the very beginning of when we started working with the grandmothers, Kaylin and I, in the Capricorn Venus cycle, I came to see that after creating the Meet Your Grandmother Guide meditation and just working a lot more deeply with them, that it seemed to me that they were connected to our DNA in some way. So that in a sense, the grandmothers, the higher guides, the grandmothers who are higher guides who come to us, who are connected to our ancestral or our bloodline, that they are the highest embodied expression of our DNA. They express the deepest ancestral wisdom from the past, but they also embody the highest future potential expressed through our genetic makeup, which is fully healed, activated, and expressed. And so that's really who they are when we have these teams of grandmothers that work with us, especially those connected to our ancestral bloodline, that this is what they access. And so in a way, they really are a part of us. They are us. They're a deeper expression of our ancestors and of our descendants. So another connection between the grandmothers and our DNA, which is just fascinating, can be found when we trace the results of our DNA tests. And of course, you can get that through 23andMe. There's a lot of companies now where you can get your DNA done. And you can actually trace that back to your original clan mother or grandmother. And you can do this by getting a DNA test and identifying your haplogroup, which I know, Kaylin, you said you've done that. I just have to admit that the work that I've done with the DNA of the grandmothers, I just now really discovered this book and this work. So I still get to find out who my clan mother is, but it's very exciting. So there are only 7 original ancestral clan mothers or grandmothers who you can derive from, they've found. And in Brian Sykes' work, the 7 daughters of Eve, he actually gives each of these 7 clan mothers a name and a story. And I've given a link to that book because, again, that's a very powerful way to link into your ancestral wisdom and grandmothers.
I just want to say really quickly, I just did this year, finally got around to doing it. And one of the things I was really amazed is that I'm in haplogroup K, and even more specifically than that, K1A1. And so my grandmother is Katrine, and being in haplogroup K. And when I changed my name back in 2006, I changed my middle name to the letter K. The whole entire middle name is the letter K. It's not an abbreviation for anything. And I was like, whoa, I'm in haplogroup K. How did I know? Like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So anyway, it was just another confirmation, validation for me to
so powerful.
So I highly recommend it. It's kind of fun to do.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm going to definitely get this book. I've heard about it through, I think Daniel's talked about it. Heard about it through other people, but how exciting as another way. We just want to give you as many practices, as many tools. So this is another way to connect into the grandmother wisdom in a kind of a literal way from your genetic ancestry.
Beautiful.
And something else to consider, which many of you may already be quite aware of, is that I know when I got a degree in biology, wildlife biology, and I remember studying biology and cellular biology. And then my uncle, who was a biochemist, he was looking at my book and he was saying, you know what, this has changed so much. It's not even the same thing at all. Everything we've learned in the last, 15 years is completely revised. And that's definitely true about what we know about genes, because they used to tell us, well, they won't change. They're unchanging. They're fixed. There's a lot of junk DNA. There are all these old stories about our DNA and how we're, it's kind of mechanistic, like it's all in our genes, it's all fixed, it's all predetermined. That's what originally, that was part of the storyline that many of us inherited when we were learning about genes early on. But there are many researchers, scientists, spiritual people developing new spiritual technologies who will now tell us that our genes, our DNA can actually be changed, can be altered. The way that they are expressed can be altered. And Bruce Lipton, in his book Biology of Belief, has done a lot of groundbreaking work there. He opened a lot of doors. And this quote I really love. It's this basic idea we have that we are controlled by our genes is false. It's an idea that turns us into victims. I'm saying we are the creators of our situation. The genes are merely the blueprints. We are the contractors, and we can adjust those blueprints, and we can even rewrite them.
Yes.
So, yes. So highly recommend his work, his book,
yes.
And a lot that's flown from it that has come from that. So again, there's just so much that's come through in the last number of years in the realm of science and spirituality with this. But one is that there is actually, originally when DNA was discovered, Watson and Crick had said that they thought that a large percentage of what they found was junk DNA. They actually coined that phrase. And I was reading this article that I highly recommend about this program called the ENCODE Project. And one of the things I love about it is that the man who is really helping to coordinate the efforts of all these scientists who are looking more deeply at DNA, is that he's saying, that really we thought it was junk, but the function of these aspects of the DNA are actually very vital. It's just that there's a lot that we don't fully understand, but they are definitely organizing. They have a vital role. And the way he describes the new kind of symbology of the way that DNA works is he's like, it's kind of like a jungle. It's just like, it's so mysterious. There's so much that's there that we don't understand. There's so much that's rich, fertile, vital resources that we can tap into. And I just love that as a way of looking at how science is evolving. There's more humbleness in that than there was before, right?
Thank God.
Yeah,
thank Goddess.
God. Breaking out of this fundamentalist scientific dogma, just like, no, we are so stunned by what we don't know, but we know that it's alive. We know that it's vital. So that's pretty cool. And then we can alter our genes. And again, I said, I already mentioned this, but Bruce Lipton, this book is a good place to start to look at how that can work. And there's an actual field of epigenetics that shows how we are impacted at the genetic level by the experiences of our parents, grandparents, and ancestors. So their genes and the way that their genes are expressed is altered through their personal experiences. So it's just another way to understand that in our bodies, through our DNA, through our genes, we are actually very much deeply influenced by our grandmothers, by our grandfathers, by our ancestors. And so knowing that, we carry the imprint of not only their trauma, but we need to remember we also carry the imprint of their deep resilience. And all of the, just think about this for a moment. All of your ancestors live inside of you, and think about all of the experiences that they've had. Think about all the challenges that they've faced and overcome. Think about the profound courage, resilience, strength, knowledge you have access to through your genes, through your genetic heritage. So just for a moment, it's not just about the trauma, it's also, we're here. And they live inside. We have access to all that wisdom and knowledge. It's profound.
And as we connect with that, and we do, we find the ways to heal within ourselves, whatever the trauma may be that's still there, that's residual or whatever, then we actually help them. So we can clear all that, and then that helps all the generations going forward as well.
Absolutely. So powerful.
Yes.
And I remember, maybe you did too, Kim, but the first time that I recognized that reality, that that what we heals in both ways, both directions, ancestors and descendants. And in that moment, it's another one of those. It's like, wow, okay, this is a point of power. Let's focus there.
Right. Right. The descendants and the ascendants, the ones that are coming. Right? The ones that have been, and the ones that
right.
And that implies ascension, right?
Yeah, there's that too, which is happening. It's really, and this is part of that process.
Beautiful.
So, considering that, you know, looking again at all these different spiritual modalities have arisen, where they're using that idea and that deep knowledge that we can heal our DNA. We can heal at that level. And so I just, again, though, I just want to say, because I feel like the grandmothers have been saying this to me these last moments, that it's really important to understand we can reset our DNA, we can turn on our DNA, and also part of connecting with grandmother wisdom is acknowledging the gifts from the past. It's not about just a reset to say, get rid of the past. It's also acknowledging and carrying forward that deep knowledge. So we have an immense data bank. We have an immense storehouse of knowledge that we can draw from. So it's more like this healing is allowing us to heal and release whatever is no longer useful, whatever is no longer relevant, whatever no longer serves, but keeping the energy that does serve from the past. So theta healing is one of many modalities that's emerging, and it's through, in many of these cases, it's actually altering the state of the brain, so integrating the theta state into our brainwave cycle, and through doing that to really alter and heal, clear the DNA. But there are so many. If you go online and you just search for DNA healing activation, there's a lot that's there.
There's also, you can get some MP3 downloads that have theta music, you know, interwoven to help put the brain into a theta state, and it's kind of cool. The other thing I wanted to say really quickly is that the mending the sacred hoop. So basically, as we're mending our DNA within us, it's like we're actively mending the sacred hoop. That is the more external reference that we get from the Native American tribes of that imagery of, you know, the sacred hoop, and we're all connected. So as we're doing that mending within ourselves, we're mending our DNA, so to speak. And in that way, we're also mending the sacred hoop. So how cool is that?
That's powerful. That's so beautiful. So I just also want to say briefly that I've seen in different visions and dreams recently that one of the ways I always feel this, to connect in with our ancestors is through the soles of our feet. And in a recent vision, I was given support to connect to my ancestral line. And I had two different ancestral lines connected through through each feet. I was reconnected in a powerful, positive way. So in terms of visioning or imagery, that's one way to think about it.
Yes.
But Kaylin and I both, when we were speaking about the original grandmother's meditation or presentations that we were giving, our videos, we talked about how both of us had grandmothers who carried a lot of rage or a lot of kind of distortions from the patriarchy. They weren't necessarily these wise, they had their own wisdom, but they were carrying a lot of trauma. And so part of my journey in working with the grandmothers was to see where that anger or wounding or patriarchal oppression experienced by my grandmother still lived in me so I could heal it. And I really, I had dreams when my grandmother had dementia and as she was dying, where I was asked by this kind of fiery figure what I did with my anger. And this was in the context of a dream where my grandmother, there was a crack in her skull and she was dying because of that. And it was caused by her own lack of she didn't have a way to express her anger. It was not safe for her to even have that emotion. And so in the dream, I was really confronted with that. What are you doing with your anger? How do you move your anger? This is because if you don't want to end up like this, if you don't want to hold the bitterness, the toxicity that your grandmother's carrying, you're going to have to deal with this. And so, that was also something that I very much learned from my grandmother, and so much else. I could go on and on, as I think many of us could. Think about, go ahead, Kaylin.
I just have one little quick thing to say, and I might have said this in the last video, I don't remember, but for me, I think one of the most toxic things I experienced from the grandmother women on both sides of my family was the idea of how it has to look good. And that and I was literally disowned by, she wasn't actually my grandmother, but I called her grandmother for a long time. She raised my dad after his mother died when he was 10. And it was so important about how things looked. And she disowned me because I got pregnant outside of marriage. I'd already had 3 children. I was divorced. So, I got pregnant outside of marriage. And that was so shameful to her that she disowned me. And my grandmother on the other side was the colonel's wife. So it was all about how it looked.
Right.
And I am like, I maybe still carry a little bit of residual of that, but I really don't care how it looks. I'm like, okay, fine. Let's get over that one and move on. So,
Yeah.
it can be lots of different ways that can show up for people.
Absolutely. It's going to be different for each one of us. But the point is, even thinking about epigenetics, that what our grandmothers experienced, part of that we might be working with as well. And so this can be one way to pinpoint that and do some deeper healing work for ourselves. So there, we could ask that question, as you're doing the journaling, as you're deepening into this work, did you have a toxic grandmother? It might have been an aunt. It might have been a great aunt. It might have been an ancestor you never met that you heard about. Have you carried any of her anger or other wounded energies? And then what would it take to heal them within, and so heal yourself and her and break the chains of ancestral wounding? So those are just some things to consider. Some points of power in this conversation.
Absolutely.
And also, as we've been talking about this, part of what is really striking is that when you live at the turning of an age, in some periods of time, you really could look to an elder who could tell you, this is kind of the path forward, and this is kind of what you need to do, and this is how it's done in our culture. And you could have maybe had a way shower, in a sense, who was an elder woman or an elder man in your tribe. And we still have some of that. We all have people in our lives who are older than us, mothers, grandmothers, aunties, who teach us things that are really vital, that preserve core culture. However, there are a lot of challenges when we do just kind of assume that because someone's older or because they are seen as a teacher or a guru, that they have the elder wisdom we need. Because part of the trademark of the time we live in is that it's really about sovereignty. It's really about each one of us finding our own inner power, our own inner wisdom, our own inner light, and being those leaders, being those co-creators with the divine. And part of it also is that we've never really done this before. Where we're at is in many ways unprecedented. Mm-hmm. So we can have many guides and allies support us and tune into that, and beautiful. But at the turning of the ages, we really, for one thing, we're wanting to unlearn. We actually are trying to decolonize or unlearn or unwrap or unravel a lot of what we've been taught that's untrue. So that's part of becoming an elder, is kind of a backwards process of letting go of what we think we know. That's part of the, at the turning of the ages, it's letting go of what we thought we were sure about. Right?
Right. And the one thing we know for sure is we really don't know anything for sure.
Yeah. Right. And so in some ways, this has always been true, that wise elders go through a youthening process as they get older. They let go of accumulated hubris or ego. That's true. And it's even maybe more emphasized now. And then really a true wise elder knows that our role is to empower others to find the answers within ourselves and the world around us. And so it can even be kind of like in shamanic astrology, there's this deep knowing that doing the sacred marriage involves often saying, okay, what is it I'm attracted to out there? I'm looking for this lover, this partner to fulfill certain qualities for me out there, when in fact I need to claim those qualities internally. There's something similar that happens with the wise elder, the guide, the way shower, where it might be useful to say, what are those qualities I'm always looking for in my elder, my teacher, my guide? What are those qualities? What am I attracted to out there? And to really begin to see those qualities inside of myself. And also to say, well, how can I continue to cultivate those qualities within? So really cultivating our own inner elder, our own inner wisdom.
Beautiful. I so love that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of take you on a little bit of a journey to access that part of yourself. Connecting with your grandmother self is another way to say that. So, in whatever ways work for you to tune into this, taking a deep breath, breathing into your belly, closing your eyes, relaxing, whatever that might look like for you. And we're going to start by just invoking the grandmother's or your grandmother's self, and then Tammy's going to take us on a little journey. So here we go. Grandmother, wise and loving one within me, you who know the ways of time, the ways beyond time, the ways of jumping timelines, the ways of forgiveness, the ways of dreaming, the ways of visioning, the ways of wise guidance, the ways of animal guides and helping spirits, the ways of love. Guide me to where you reside within me, traveling to my future wise self in this life or some other life where my wise guidance is most alive for me. What is the most important thing for me to know now? Send me a message in the form of a vision, symbol, medicine animal, words, feeling, or dream. Sacred Grandmother within, thank you for guiding me with all your wisdom, experience, and knowing, so that I now seed and embody the new earth within me in ways that support my life and all life everywhere. Aho.
Aho. So just take a moment to truly see and feel. She's sitting right in front of you. Your future grandmother, it's also your future self. Allow yourself to just bask in her presence, to be present with her, and to receive whatever that vision is, and just see what she looks like. Listen to what she has to say to you. Just spend a moment with her. And now that you have you've encountered your future grandmother guide, take her hand. And now look and see in front of you, and you see a big, beautiful tree. Both of you are standing there, and you see a big, beautiful tree. It may be a tree that you have had in your life that's very important, maybe from childhood, maybe from your current life. And now as you come closer to this tree, the both of you, look and see that there's an etching along the inside of the tree, and you see that it's a doorway, and somehow, as you open it, it's quite big enough for both of you to step through. And as you step through, you see yourself in a dark room, and you smell the scent of the earth, and you see that there are steps spiraling down, down deep into the earth, and you take those steps, step by step, down to the last step. And you see once again in front of you a doorway, and you open that door, both of you go through. And it opens into a little clearing in the middle of an aspen forest with a beautiful mountain stream flowing in front of you and your future grandmother. And on the bank of the stream, you see a wooden bench and a couple of chairs beside the bench. And sitting on this bench, you see a grandmother from your past, from your bloodline. She might be a grandmother you knew personally or saw photos of or heard stories about. She might be someone you were not aware of, but she is of your ancestral line. She is the grandmother who has been carrying the trauma and pain passed down to you, and which is having the biggest impact in your life now, blocking you from your fullest liberation, joy, and full activation of your full self. You sit beside her on the bench, and your future grandmother sits in a chair facing you, holding a supportive space for both of you. This ancestral grandmother also has a message for you. She tells you of the pain, of her struggle, and she shares with you how it is impacting you and your life. Be fully present and listen to her story and bear witness as you would with a beloved friend. See the cord of light that connects you and in what area of your body it is connected to her. And just listen. And when she is complete, tell her what is in your heart to share. You might thank her, you might cry with her, you might tell her how sorry you are for what she had to experience. And now your future grandmother, she who has been holding loving space for both of you, opens her hands with each of her palms facing the both of you. You see a clear white light streaming from her hands, bathing you in divine love and light. When you look at yourself and the grandmother beside you, it is as if you can see the strands of DNA within her body and yours, lit up by this sacred light. You can see that some of the chromosomes in the DNA strands are filled with light, but many are dark. As the loving, clear, and warm light surrounds and fills you and your ancestral grandmother, you see more and more lights coming on, one by one, almost like Christmas lights, until both you and your ancestral grandmother's DNA is filled with light, radiating a soft and warm glow. You feel the sensation of these lights as profound joy, awakening, and a coming home to yourself. You feel clearer, sharper, more alive and awake than you have ever felt before. You understand that this process of healing and activating your DNA, which is healing both yourself and all of your ancestors and descendants, will unfold in perfect timing from this moment forward with grace and flow, empowering you to live with joy, with strength, and fully awakened I am essence and sovereignty. You turn to look at your ancestral grandmother and see the light sparkling in her eyes, and you know that she too is on a healing journey of joy and homecoming. You embrace her, and when you do, you know you are embracing your wisest, most loving, ancient grandmother, and are now able to access the deepest wisdom from all generations past. You also know that any and all distortions and wounding in your ancestral DNA are undergoing a rapid reset to their original perfection in perfect timing with your highest good and the good of the earth and all of creation. And now you also turn to embrace your future grandmother, although for a moment you might dance together. And now as you embrace her, know that you are embracing the full embodied expression of yourself, holding the fully activated DNA with all the wisdom from your ancient past, all the wisdom from any parallel lives, any future lives, and those of your descendants. Know that you have access now with your future grandmother to your fully actualized self, to that full self that you have come here to incarnate in this moment in time, where the grandmother wisdom is needed as never before. And so it is. Blessed be. And now return, fully activated by your ancient and future grandmother, up the steps, into the tree, back into the room where you began, back into your body, and back into the present moment. And here we are.
That was awesome. Interesting. I had a revelation. When I was 14, I was helping my mother break a horse to ride, and the horse threw himself over on top of me, which could have killed me. It didn't, but I took the full weight of over 1,000 pounds on my left hip. And I realized that that was one of the threads that was connecting to my ancestral grandmother. And then the other one was to the heart. And there's heart issues and from the other line. I was like, oh, I got both. I don't know why I got both, but I got both. Anyway, and I've done a lot of personal work to heal this because I could hardly walk. After that, I cracked my tailbone as well. And I've had to do a lot of work to be able to be mobile. And I feel like it was like something that was, slowing down or and hindering or in the way of the of my grandmother line, of the ancestral feminine line, and that I took it into my body to heal it so that we could all move forward. So that was a big piece that I got. I was like, wow. And I'm about 95% of the way there. I still have a little work to do, but
Wow.
Yeah. So that was really, really awesome. Thank you, Tammy, for that.
You're so welcome. That was sweet. I love this work.
I know, me too.
So glad to work with you.
Me too. It's so great. It's beyond great. So as we just wrap this up, we want to invite you to join us for our anything that we're doing with Venus Alchemy. You can go to venusalchemy.com, and hopefully we'll have our website updated by then with the most current offerings. And we're also going to have a video on Venus and the Underworld journey that began on November 27th and will last until February 19th as a free offering if you go to the videos page of our website. And you actually have to click on, I might even have Peter add another sidebar button, or we'll figure that out. But you have to get to the inner menu. So you have to click on something to get to the inner menu to get to the videos page right now. And then hopefully that'll be changed by the time this goes live. Anyway, so we would love to have you join us. This is what we do. We have so much fun doing it. and we'd love to have more people join us, because really our mission and our purpose is to alchemically change the world, to change ourselves first, and then through that we're changing the world. So.
Absolutely. And this grandmother work that we've been doing today and in our other course it so deeply informs everything we do with Venus Alchemy. They guide the process. So just know, in our Venus Alchemy, the ceremonial course that's going to begin in March, and then the personal Venus signature, Get Personal with the Goddess course, which begins in January, that those processes are also deeply informed by everything we're talking about.
Indeed, very much so. And we just want to give so much gratitude to the grandmothers for bringing us together to do this work in the first place.
Yes.
Because they totally guided us. Yeah, they totally guided us to do this, and we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. How much fun it would be.
No.
So,
right.
Yes, awesome. Bye, Tammy.
Bye, Kaylin.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.